Good morning, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing, we wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. It's still early to talk about recovering from the pandemic, but I ran across a very interesting bit of data. Now, my United States listeners might not be able to relate to this, but up in Canada, we had a program, two programs in fact, the CERB and the CRB, which basically guaranteed you were going to get $2,000 a month if you were affected by the lockdown. Now, a lot of people wound up going on it, and there was a little bit of shenanigans regarding it wasn't taxed properly, so people wound up having to pay more in taxes than they normally do. But the most interesting part is that despite being entitled, and yes, entitled, to $2,000 per month, most of the people who are on it wound up going back to work voluntarily. And that's not just people going back to the jobs that they were laid off from. That's people willingly rejoining the workforce. Even for salaries much less than $2,000 a month. That's hourly minimum wage jobs. People were willing to go back to those jobs. Now, why is this interesting news? Because it proves the pessimists wrong. It's long been said, give the people a chance. They're going to laze around and do nothing. I think that goes back to Adam Locke. And in a way, it is true. But here we are in 2021 and 2020, just before, and when you're handing people money over the table, they would still rather work and earn money than be given that money. Not everybody, obviously, there's exceptions that didn't take the deal, but that is a remarkable quality for humanity. And it kind of stands in stark contrast to my show from the other day, where on the Silverlight Show, we pointed out that there is a coming economic collapse. But people are still willing to go to work. It shows people want to earn their keep. They want to feel relevant. Sitting around at home doesn't give them anything to do. And for a lot of people, their job is their Cause Sui project. The Cause Sui project is what defines you. It makes you who you are. And while you might look at a doctor or a lawyer, somebody in a high-profile position, letting that define their life, no, we're talking clerks, telephone operators, just regular folks earning regular amounts of money. Their jobs still define them. Now, I question how many of these people went back to work simply to avoid being locked in the high-rise apartment that I have in front of you, with their 2-3 kids, whatever it is, and having no private space. Because an office is very different than the home. At the office, generally, most everybody is clean, showered, relatively well-dressed, and they treat you with a certain degree of respect. Not always, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And a lot of offices, that's the way things are. Even a lot of workplaces, if you're a construction worker, although construction workers really were not affected badly by the pandemic. There was always construction going on through the whole thing. It is, of course, an essential service. Food, restaurants, stuff like that is an essential service. But people are defining themselves by work. This is at one point very good because it shows people want to work, despite what the pessimists say, despite the fact that, having a social safety net is communism and leads to decay. No, we're now getting the data in that shows it doesn't lead to laziness. Yes, there's going to be the bottom 10%. In any equation, you're going to find the bottom 10% of people who want to sit at home, who want to do nothing, who want to sit back, drink beer, watch football, and play poker online. I know it's the worst stereotype I could think of. Probably not true a lot of the case. But the fact is, there's also a significant identity crisis that this exposes in the Western world, the Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies. People do identify themselves with their jobs. Again, for a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, someone like that, not a problem. But if you're a ditch digger and that's your life, all the power to you. I'm not casting any aspersions on you, but life should be more than that. It's like when people say their children are their greatest accomplishment. Now, if your child has grown up to be a Gandhi or a Churchill or somebody who's gone on to do amazing things, yes. But if your child's a regular run-of-the-mill person, your accomplishment should be broader than that. Yes, your children should be a source of pride. I am in no way looking down on children. But the identity of the Western world is your job and your children. In other words, how you can fit into the economic mainstream, how you are consuming and how you are producing additional consumers. Because without consumers, money doesn't wind up getting pumped back into the system. The billionaires and the rich sure as heck aren't going to do it. So it's up to you. Buy those cars. Buy those big screen TVs. Buy yourself a black box so that you can watch Netflix or whatever it is. All those crazy things. You know what? That's you consuming. They're so happy to reopen the restaurants and the movie theaters and all these things because it means you will be consuming. It's back to sort of normal. Not quite 100% normal, but pretty normal. Again, I want to highlight the fact that people are identifying with their jobs so much that they're willing to go out during a pandemic, which we're not going to debate the reality of it at this point. We're just going to accept it as an event that happened to the world. Just like in the Avengers, when they had the Thanos snap and people talked about it, we're probably going to have therapy groups on it. There's probably at some point in the future going to be a commercial where somebody comes out where you and your family put out of work from 2020 to 2021. Chances are you could be in for a huge settlement. And I pray like heck that doesn't apply to the vaccine. Were you and your family giving the blank vaccine in 2021? Then give us a call. You could be entitled to millions in damages. I'm kind of waiting for those lawsuits in about 20 years. But people were willing to risk danger and exposure to the virus simply to go back to work. This meant the teachers wanted to go back to work. This meant the ditch diggers wanted to go back to work. This meant the McDonald's employees wanted to go back to work. Everybody you could think of would have rather been working. What does that say about our work ethic and our identification in general? Are we a society or are we a group of collective drones? You know, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Well, people had the chance for unlimited play and they turned it down. They would rather be identified as what they work as. Now, me, as a podcaster, talk show host, and author, Silverlight has his own goals to accomplish. I have worked in the offices. I've been very successful at doing it, and I don't in any way stare down my nose at people that are doing it. But I just find it troubling to think that is the limit of their identity. That going to work, hanging around a water cooler and working that way is more valuable than spending time at home that almost everybody before the pandemic wished they had more time for. Now, the dollar is going up and infection rates are going up. The next few months will be very telling. I don't think it would be possible to do another successful lockdown. That's just simply because people are so tired of them. There'll be so much civil disobedience. So I think, God forbid, if there is another flare-up, people are just going to try to power through it. I mean, they're not going to trust anybody. If the government says it's only going to be 2 weeks, they're going to say, you said it was only going to be 2 weeks last time. And they won't be wrong to think that way. It's actually quite logical. We're in for a very interesting 2021 to 2022. There's a lot of things that are on the table that are really, really astonishing. And no one's even talking about the China-US trade war, in addition to them threatening each other over Taiwan. Curious how that keeps getting bumped out of the news. Or when it does, it's like, U.S. flies bombers by, China threatens the United States. And yeah, it's out there. It's brewing. Now, quite likely, no one's going to want to go to war. War only benefits the rich. It has no benefits for the poor. And I'd argue it doesn't even have benefits for the rich. But all this simmering tension that has been left over, that we've kind of touched on the show before, it's going to come to a head. And now that people are back in their offices and looking for gossip and the topic of the day, it's something that's going to start coming up. People will now have the chance to say, we had to put this off for 2 years. It needs to be addressed, which is a correct way to go about things. But we need to remember, what is our identity? Who do we identify as? Are we our job? Are we consumers? Or are we human beings? Are we worth something more? Again, kudos to everybody who went back, especially those who walked away from $2,000 guaranteed to take less money to do whatever it is that you're doing. At the same token, as wonderful as that is to hear, and shuts down all the rhetoric from the Lockeans and the people who will come out and say people are naturally lazy. No, they aren't. We just proved it. As wonderful as that is, it does make me worry. What is the end goal for most people? Go to school, get a job, have kids, die. That's all most people aspire to. And that's what this statistic seems to show. And the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic societies, that is our raison d'etre, our reason for being. Great for the Protestant work ethic. And if you know where I'm referencing, yeah, that's exactly what I'm referencing. But it makes me wonder about people's soul when they're willing to turn down money and the opportunity to spend time with their kids and all sorts of stuff like that, just so they can go back to a 9-to-5 job where they're just another number. They're just another victim of the system. Like I said, these sort of things will shake out over the next year or so. We live in interesting times. The ancient Chinese curse has never been more appropriate. And I have a feeling they're going to get more interesting. But the Silverlight Show will be here to cover them. So, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this show, like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, we hope you all have a fantastic day.